My name is Claire Whitman. I am 34 years old. 10 days after I woke up from a coma, I stood inside the grand ballroom of the Magnolia Crest Yacht Club in Charleston, South Carolina, staring at 140 people who believed they were attending a celebration of my survival. The room smelled of white orchids, champagne, expensive perfume, and money that had been polished until it looked like virtue. Behind the glass walls, the harbor glittered under the last gold of the evening sun. White yachts rocked gently in the water. Waiters moved between the tables with silver trays, and a pianist in the corner played something soft enough to make lies sound elegant. My mother, Eleanor Whitman, stood on the stage in a silver satin dress, dabbing at her eyes with a folded white handkerchief. She had just spent nearly 10 minutes telling everyone how she had sat beside my hospital bed for 17 days, praying for a miracle. She told them she had held my hand while machines kept me alive. She told them family was sacred. She told them a mother's love had pulled me back from death. The room believed her. Women in pearls wiped their eyes. Men in tailored jackets lowered their heads with respect. My sister, Brielle, stood near the front table in a white dress, one hand pressed to her chest, performing the role of the exhausted but devoted sister. Then my mother turned to me and said, "Claire, sweetheart, come up here. Let everyone see what a miracle looks like." I walked slowly toward the stage, leaning on a polished wooden cane I did not need anymore. Every step was part of the performance. Every tremble in my hand was rehearsed. When I reached the podium, my mother tried to wrap her arm around me, but I stepped out of her reach. I took the microphone. I looked at the crowd. I looked at my mother. Then I let the cane fall from my hand. It hit the floor with a hard wooden crack, and the entire room went silent. I stood up straight for the first time that night. My voice did not shake when I said, "My mother just told you I survived a medical tragedy. She is lying. I survived a poisoning." The pianist stopped playing. Brielle's champagne glass trembled in her hand. The blood drained out of my mother's face so quickly, she looked carved from wax. I leaned closer to the microphone and said, "Before this evening ends, every person in this room will know who put arsenic in my coffee, who drained my bank accounts while I was unconscious, and why the FBI is standing outside those doors. But before I tell you what happened in that ballroom, before I tell you what they found in my sister's kitchen, and why my mother's pearl necklace broke while she was being handcuffed, I need you to understand how a family can smile at you across a dinner table while quietly planning your death. And if you have ever been treated like the responsible one, the useful one, the person everyone calls selfish the moment you stop giving, then listen closely. Subscribe if stories of betrayal, justice, and survival mean something to you. Leave your age in the comments because I want to know who is still awake enough to recognize the truth when it finally walks into the room. Now let me take you back 17 days earlier, to the moment I opened my eyes in the ICU and realized my family had not been waiting for me to wake up. They had been waiting to see if I would die. The first sound I heard was the steady beep of a heart monitor. It was not dramatic. It was not cinematic. It was small, flat, and mechanical, like a machine counting out the seconds of a life it had no emotional investment in saving. My throat felt like it had been lined with sandpaper. My arms were bruised from IVs. My chest ached every time I tried to breathe too deeply. When I opened my eyes, the ceiling above me was white and speckled, the kind of ceiling you only stare at when you have lost control of your body and someone else is deciding whether you are alive enough to move. A nurse stepped into the room, paused when she saw my eyes open, and gave me a careful smile. Not a joyful smile, not the kind people give when a family has been keeping vigil for weeks. It was the professional smile of someone about to say something gentle, because the truth was not gentle at all. "Welcome back, Claire," she said. "You've been unconscious for 17 days. 17 days. The number seemed impossible. I tried to ask what happened, but my voice came out broken. Then I asked the only question that mattered. My mother? My sister? Are they outside? The nurse looked down at the clipboard in her hands. That was answer enough. She adjusted the IV line, checked the monitor, and said, "We called them several times. I can try again." I turned my head toward the visitor chair beside my bed. It was empty. Not just empty in the moment, empty in a way that had history. No coat draped over the back. No half-finished coffee cup on the table. No dying flowers. No folded blanket. No book. No proof that anyone had ever sat there and waited for me to come back. My phone was in a plastic hospital bag beside the bed. I asked for it with a hand so weak it barely lifted off the sheet. The battery was almost dead, but when the screen lit up, I expected missed calls. Dozens of them. Maybe frantic voicemails. Maybe messages from my mother demanding updates. There was nothing from Eleanor Whitman. Not one missed call, not one message. There was only a text from Brielle, sent the afternoon I was admitted. It said, "When you're done making everything dramatic, call me." I stared at those words until the letters blurred. The pain in my body was sharp, but that sentence landed deeper. Because that was my family in one line. If I suffered, I was dramatic. If I set a boundary, I was selfish. If I refused to rescue them financially, I had forgotten where I came from. Brielle had always been the golden child, the beautiful one, the fragile one, the one my mother said needed help because life was harder for her somehow, even though everything had always been handed to her first. I was the practical one, the useful one, the one who got scholarships, worked through college, paid my own rent, built my career in forensic accounting, and was still expected to act grateful whenever my mother remembered my birthday. I spent years tracing hidden assets, forged ledgers, shell companies, fraudulent transfers. I knew how money moved when people wanted it to disappear. What I did not know yet was that I was about to investigate the most personal case of my life. Later that afternoon, Dr. Julian Mercer came into my room carrying a thick file. He did not look like a man coming to celebrate a recovery. He looked like a man entering a crime scene. His badge said toxicology. He closed the door behind him before he spoke. "Claire," he said, "we need to talk about what we found in your blood." He explained that my liver and kidneys had nearly failed. At first, the emergency team thought it might be a rare reaction, maybe a sudden autoimmune crisis, maybe contamination from something accidental. But he specialized in chemical exposure, and the pattern was too specific. My blood and hair samples showed arsenic. Not a trace amount, not the kind of exposure that comes from bad water or a contaminated supplement. Repeated exposure. Small doses over several weeks. "Someone was poisoning you gradually," he said. "This was not an accident." I lay there with tubes in my arm, trying to make the sentence belong to someone else. Then he asked if I remembered anything strange from the 5 weeks before I collapsed. At first, my mind was foggy. Then the fragments came back. Coffee that tasted faintly metallic. Stomach cramps I blamed on stress. White lines on my nails I ignored. Hair in the shower drain. Exhaustion so heavy I had once sat in my car outside my office for 15 minutes because I could not remember why I had driven there. I had blamed work. I had blamed long hours. I had blamed myself. That is what people like me are trained to do. We explain away the harm because admitting someone close is causing it feels more dangerous than the harm itself. Dr. Mercer said he had requested my family come in immediately. Eleanor and Brielle arrived nearly 2 hours later. My mother entered first, wearing cream silk and jasmine perfume, her makeup flawless, a new gold watch flashing at her wrist. Brielle came behind her with an iced latte and her phone in her hand. Neither of them cried. Neither of them rushed to my bed. My mother looked at the machines around me and sighed, as if intensive care had inconvenienced her afternoon. Brielle glanced at my face and said, "You look awful." Dr. Mercer explained the arsenic. He explained the timing. He explained that police had been contacted. My mother did not say, "Who would do this to my daughter?" She did not grab my hand. She did not ask if I was safe. Her first question was, "Is all of this really necessary legally?" That was the first crack. Small, almost invisible. But I had spent my life reading cracks in stories people wanted me to believe. The police came soon after. They asked if I had enemies. That was an easy question if you looked at my career instead of my family. I gave them the name Grant Halverson, a former executive at a shipping firm whose fraud I had uncovered 6 months earlier. He had stolen from employee benefit accounts, hidden losses through fake vendor invoices, and when my report cost him his job, he sent me an email saying I would regret it. The detectives liked that. It was clean. A disgraced man seeking revenge on the accountant who ruined him. Brielle liked it too. She stepped forward with the concerned sister voice she used when strangers were watching and said I had been ordering strange wellness products online. Mineral powders, detox coffees, low-acid blends. Maybe I had consumed something contaminated. Dr. Mercer argued that the levels in my body were too high, too deliberate, too sustained. But the detectives had already found a story that fit inside a police report. A professional enemy, a possible contaminated product. Much easier than a mother in pearls and a sister in white standing 3 feet from the bed. When they left, Eleanor kissed the air near my forehead and said I should rest. Brielle told me not to stress because stress would slow the healing. Then they left. And for the first time since waking up, I understood something with absolute clarity. If I waited for someone else to save me, I was going to die. 3 days later, Daniel Reeves came to the hospital after visiting hours. Daniel was Brielle's husband, a history lecturer at a private academy, a quiet man who had spent 10 years pretending his marriage was normal because pretending was easier than breaking his children's world apart. He looked exhausted when he slipped into my room. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes were red. He sat beside my bed and twisted his wedding ring so hard I thought he might cut himself. "Claire," he whispered, "did you give Brielle money before you got sick?" I stared at him. "What money?" He swallowed. Their house in Mount Pleasant had a balloon payment due, $92,000. They did not have it. He had been terrified they would lose the house. Then, 3 days after I entered the ICU, Brielle told him it had been handled. She said I had decided to help because family was family. She said my mother had arranged it. Daniel had checked the account. The payment was real, but the source was hidden behind a routing number he did not recognize. "Did you authorize it?" he asked. "No," I said. "I did not give her $1." His face changed. Something inside him sank. And as he sat there, I remembered a rainy evening in Savannah about a month before I collapsed. Brielle had come to my townhouse with a stack of documents. Tax forms for our mother, insurance papers, estate paperwork left over from my father's death. I had been tired that night. My head hurt. My coffee tasted strange. Brielle kept pointing to signature lines saying, "This one too, and here, and here." I had trusted her enough to sign quickly. I was a forensic accountant. I knew better. But that is the thing about family. They do not always break in. Sometimes you open the door because they are carrying your mother's paperwork and wearing a sad face. I looked at Daniel and said, "She slipped a power of attorney into the stack." His mouth opened, but no words came out. A durable power of attorney would let Brielle act on my behalf if I was incapacitated, if I was unconscious, if I was too poisoned to answer a fraud alert. Suddenly, the poisoning and the money were no longer separate mysteries. They were one machine. The next morning, Daniel brought my secure laptop in an old canvas bag. I used a private hotspot, logged into my financial dashboard, and began the audit from my hospital bed. My checking account was mostly untouched, which told me the thief understood appearances. Empty checking accounts cause bounced payments and immediate alarms. Investment accounts are quieter if you know how to move them. My main portfolio was gone. $410,000 liquidated in one day. The authorization file attached to the transaction was a scanned power of attorney. My real signature was on it. Brielle had not forged me. She had tricked me into signing my own financial execution. I moved to county property records. My Savannah townhouse had a new home equity loan against it, $275,000. The borrower was listed as Claire Whitman by power of attorney. The co-signer was Eleanor Whitman. I stared at my mother's name until the room seemed to tilt. Part of me had wanted to believe Brielle was the desperate one, and Eleanor was simply weak. Manipulative, yes. Favoring Brielle, yes. But not capable of this. Not my mother. Not the woman who once braided my hair before school and told me I was too serious for my age. But her signature was there, clean and legal and damning. I kept digging. I found a hidden email archive where my bank alerts had been forwarded automatically, a system I had set up years earlier for compliance tracking. One message confirmed a wire transfer at 3:37 in the afternoon. I pulled up my ICU chart. At 3:35 that same afternoon, my heart had stopped for 4 minutes. Doctors were fighting to bring me back while my family was moving my money. That is when grief turned into something colder, something useful. I contacted Agent Nolan Price, an FBI investigator I had worked with years before on a laundering case. Then I called Rebecca Sloan, a civil attorney known for freezing assets before liars finished their breakfast. I sent them the documents, but I told them not to move yet. I did not just need suspicion, I needed confession. I needed my mother and sister to feel so safe they would say the truth out loud. So I became exactly what they wanted me to be. When Eleanor and Brielle came to discharge me, I spoke slowly. I let my eyes drift. I knocked over a plastic cup and stared at it as though I could not understand what had happened. When Brielle asked if I remembered anything about money, I blinked and whispered, "Everything feels like fog." Relief passed between them like a secret handshake. They insisted I come stay at Brielle's house in Mount Pleasant. They said I could not be alone. They said family takes care of family. I said thank you, with a voice weak enough to make them smile. Brielle's house looked perfect from the outside. White siding, gas lanterns, trimmed hedges, a porch swing no one used except for photographs. Inside, everything smelled of vanilla candles and expensive cleaning products. She put me in the guest room, gave me water, 2 sleeping pills, and a cup of liver recovery tea. I placed the pills in my mouth, swallowed the water, waited until she left, then spat the pills into a tissue and poured the tea into a potted plant. I did not sleep. At 2:18 in the morning, the bedroom door opened. I smelled jasmine before I heard her, my mother's perfume. I kept my breathing slow, my body limp. Eleanor came to the bed and stood over me for a long time. Then she lifted my right hand. I felt something cold press against my thumb. A small device glowed green behind my closed eyelids. Biometric verification. I had one protected investment account they had not touched yet, $680,000 locked behind thumbprint authorization. My mother held my sleeping hand against a scanner and used my body like a key. When she let go, my wrist dropped onto the mattress. She did not even place it gently back down. In that moment, the last child inside me stopped waiting for a mother to appear. The next morning, Eleanor and Brielle left to choose dresses for the gala they were planning in my honor. That was the word they used. Honor. They were going to stand me up in front of Charleston society and harvest sympathy for surviving the poisoning they had arranged. As soon as the front door closed, Daniel came into the guest room. He looked like a man who had not slept. He told me he had checked the home camera system. Brielle had deleted files from the local storage, but she had forgotten about the cloud backup. His hands shook when he gave me the USB drive. "I saw her," he said. "I saw what she put in your coffee." I plugged the drive into my laptop and opened the video. Brielle's kitchen appeared on the screen, bright and spotless. She stood at the counter beside a pitcher of cold brew labeled for me. She opened a container marked Organic Mineral Blend, reached inside, and pulled out a small bag of pale gray powder. She measured it carefully, added it to the coffee, and stirred. While she stirred, her phone was on speaker. My voice came through faintly, thanking her for bringing me coffee during busy season. Brielle answered sweetly, "Of course. You need to take care of yourself. I worry about you." On screen, her hand kept stirring poison into my drink. Daniel began to cry. Not loudly, just one broken breath after another. He said he was taking the children to his parents' house in Colombia, and he would testify. "I lost my wife the second I watched that video," he said. "I'm not letting my children lose their souls in this house, too." I told him not to confront Brielle. Get the children out, stay away. Let the evidence do what emotion could not. That night, Brielle came into my room carrying a mug of amber-colored tea. She said it would help flush toxins from my liver. She smiled as if she had not already damaged it herself. I had a micro recorder taped under my blouse, just below my collarbone. I took the mug with trembling hands. When she left to get a warm cloth, I poured the tea into a sterile specimen bag Rebecca had sent through a courier disguised as a pharmacy delivery. I sealed it, hid it beneath the mattress pad, and held the empty mug when Brielle returned. Her face lit with satisfaction. She thought I had swallowed the final dose. She sat beside me with a glass of white wine and watched my eyelids droop. People become careless when they believe they have already won. She spoke first about money. She said I always acted superior because I saved and invested while she had a family to maintain. She said I did not need that money because I had no husband, no children, no image to protect. She admitted she had slipped the power of attorney into the documents. She admitted to the $410,000. She admitted the $92,000 saved her house. Then, when I whispered, "Why?" she leaned close enough for me to smell wine on her breath and said, "Because Mom told me to." My heart slammed against the recorder. Brielle told me Eleanor had been drowning in illegal gambling debt for years, private poker rooms, offshore betting accounts, men who threatened to expose her if she did not pay. Eleanor had found the arsenic, ordered it through a foreign vendor, and convinced Brielle that if I died of organ failure, no one would ever question it. "She said you were alone anyway," Brielle whispered. "She said your money could save both of us." I lay still. I let my mouth hang slightly open. I let her believe the tea was pulling me under. When she finally left and locked the door, I waited 10 minutes before moving. Then I peeled the recorder from my skin and pressed stop. I had the bank records, the loan documents, the biometric attempt, the poison tea, the video, and the confession. The trap was no longer being built. It was closed. All that remained was choosing where to spring it. Eleanor had already chosen the stage for me. The gala at Magnolia Crest Yacht Club was scheduled for Saturday evening. Eleanor called it a celebration of my miraculous return. Brielle called it a healing moment for the family. I called Agent Price and sent him everything. I told him where we would be, who would attend, and when my mother would begin speaking. He did not argue. He knew me well enough to understand that when I handed over a 312-page financial dossier, it was not drama. It was a prosecution roadmap. I spent the day of the gala looking weaker than I felt. Pale foundation, no blush, loose dress, wooden cane, slow steps. By the time I entered the ballroom, Eleanor was glowing. She wore silver satin and pearls, queen of a world she had almost purchased with my life. Brielle floated through the room, accepting praise for caring for me. Guests told me I was lucky to have such a family. I smiled politely. I let them believe the lie for one more hour. Then Eleanor took the stage. She gave the speech I knew she would give. She spoke of sleepless nights she never spent, prayers she never prayed, a bedside vigil that never happened. She said family had carried us through darkness. I waited until the room was fully hers, until every person there had offered her their sympathy. Then she called me up. I climbed the stage, took the microphone, dropped the cane, and told the truth. The screen behind me changed from a slideshow of family photos to the power of attorney. Gasps moved through the room. I explained that while I was unconscious, my sister used that document to liquidate $410,000 from my investment account. The screen changed again to the home equity loan. I explained that my mother co-signed a fraudulent $275,000 loan against my Savannah townhouse. Brielle shouted that I was confused, that the poisoning had damaged my brain. I ignored her and nodded to the technician. The video began. Brielle appeared on the screen in her white kitchen, stirring gray powder into my coffee. The entire ballroom went still. No one coughed. No one whispered. They watched her hand move in circles, watched the label on the pitcher, heard her voice telling me she worried about me. Then I played the audio. Brielle's confession filled the room. Mom found the arsenic. Mom bought it. Mom said if Claire died of organ failure, no one would suspect us. Eleanor lunged toward me then, not like a grieving mother, but like a cornered animal. She tried to grab the microphone. I stepped back and said, "Do not touch me again." At that exact moment, the ballroom doors opened. Agent Nolan Price entered with federal agents and Charleston police. The fantasy collapsed all at once. Brielle screamed that my mother made her do it. Eleanor whispered my name like it still had power over me. It did not. Brielle was arrested for attempted murder, wire fraud, identity theft, and financial exploitation. Eleanor was arrested for conspiracy to commit murder, financial fraud, tax evasion, and transactions tied to illegal gambling. When the agents cuffed my mother, her pearl necklace snapped. White beads scattered across the polished floor, rolling under tables, bouncing against chair legs, disappearing beneath the shoes of the same people she had spent her life trying to impress. No one helped her pick them up. The legal aftermath was not glamorous. Justice rarely is. It moved through hearings, filings, warrants, subpoenas, frozen accounts, and rooms that smelled like paper and old carpet. 2 days after the arrest, Eleanor and Brielle appeared in court, wearing orange jumpsuits instead of satin and pearls. Their attorneys asked for bail. The prosecutor pointed to offshore accounts, poison, forged authority, and a victim who had survived only because a doctor recognized the signs in time. Bail was denied. Rebecca Sloan moved quickly. The fraudulent loan on my Savannah townhouse was voided. The bank, terrified of being tied to an attempted murder conspiracy, removed the lien in 48 hours. The investment transfers were traced, frozen, and mostly recovered. The protected $680,000 account was secured before my mother could drain it. Daniel filed for divorce and received full custody of his children. He moved them to Columbia, where they got a backyard, a new school, and a chance to grow up outside the shadow of a woman who could smile while poisoning her own sister. 8 months later, the trial ended. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. Guilty on all major counts. Eleanor received the longer sentence because she was the architect. Brielle received enough years to make her white dresses and champagne flutes feel like artifacts from someone else's life. I gave a victim impact statement without crying. I told the judge that my mother had not only tried to steal my money, she had tried to turn my body into paperwork, my coma into opportunity, and my death into a financial strategy. I told him Brielle had not simply followed orders, she had stirred poison with her own hand. Mercy, I said, should not be wasted on people who mistook love for access. A year has passed since the gala. I sold the townhouse in Savannah. I could not keep living in a place where every corner had become evidence. The kitchen where I drank the coffee, the table where I signed the documents, the hallway where Brielle once hugged me with the same arms she later used to prepare my poison. I bought a house outside Asheville, North Carolina, near a quiet lake surrounded by pine trees and fog. I left the big firm and opened a small forensic accounting practice for victims of domestic financial abuse. People come to me when a son has drained a parent's account, when a spouse has hidden assets, when a sibling has manipulated a power of attorney, when someone they loved has turned trust into a weapon. I used to follow money for corporations. Now I follow it for people who have been told they are crazy, selfish, ungrateful, or dramatic for noticing they are being robbed. Daniel sends pictures sometimes. His children are doing well. Dr. Mercer and I still have coffee when I am in Charleston for client meetings. Agent Price sent me a short message after sentencing. You built the case better than most investigators. I kept that one. And then there was Magnolia Crest Yacht Club. After the scandal, memberships dropped, donations dried up. Their commercial mortgage went into distress. Through an anonymous company, I bought the debt. I now own the financial fate of the ballroom, where my mother tried to crown herself a saint. The people who once applauded her speeches now send their membership dues into an account I control, though they do not know it. I could foreclose if I wanted. For now, I simply hold the note. Some victories do not need an audience. Tonight, the sun is setting behind the trees outside my kitchen window. The lake is turning dark blue. My house is quiet in a way that no longer feels lonely. I make coffee, and for the first time in months, I do not check the bottom of the cup for powder. I just drink it. It tastes bitter, clean, ordinary. And after everything, ordinary feels like a miracle. I lock the door, sit by the window, and open a book I have been meaning to read for weeks. There is no text from Brielle calling me dramatic. No voicemail from Eleanor telling me family comes first. No one asking me to sign something, lend something, forgive something, forget something. I spent most of my life believing family was an obligation you survived. I was wrong. Blood is not a contract. It is not permission. It does not give anyone the right to poison your peace, drain your accounts, or call your boundaries cruelty. The people who belong in your life are not the ones who share your last name. They are the ones who do not require you to die slowly so they can live comfortably. My mother threw a gala to celebrate the miracle of my survival. She never understood that the miracle was not that I woke up. The miracle was that when I finally opened my eyes, I saw everything clearly. And once I saw it, I never looked away again.